So, I'm Tiffany. Welcome to the garden that I am working on. I'm switching from these raised beds to a no-dig compost on the ground method instead. So I tried to overwinter a lot of plants in my sunroom. I have a very large sunroom. It's over 500 square feet, and it has windows that are almost floor to ceiling, and the ceiling is, I don't know, maybe about 12 feet. So it's a pretty good room, lots of sunlight, good sized room. It doesn't have any heating, but it stays about 55 degrees even when it's about 10 degrees outside. So it's a pretty good greenhouse, as it turns out. I did try starting some tomato seeds. I started these back in maybe September or October. I believe they're some sort of an heirloom variety that I got for free. They didn't do super well. They had a lot of diseases in that room. There is nothing that is predatory inside of a house. So aphids, thrips, all kinds of crap just set on these, and fungus. And I tried neem oil and I tried diatomaceous earth, and just nothing really worked on this. But they are doing really well actually transitioning outside, which was the experiment and why I used free seeds. I was concerned that, if I brought them outside without hardening them off or gradually bringing them outside, that they would die. But actually they have transitioned outdoors without any sort of shelter or hardening off or anything pretty well. They're just floppy, sad, weak little things. Maybe they'll get better. The rest of the plants that I attempted to overwinter were mature plants that I dug up out of the garden, or they were tomatoes that I took. I clipped the suckers and I stuck them in dirt. And I probably brought about 50 tomato plants indoors. Not a whole lot of them made it because of the aforementioned aphids, thrips, fungus, and just that sort of situation that was going on inside the sunroom. The room used to be my art studio, actually, and I want to call it the studio all the time, but it isn't a studio anymore. It's more of a workshop / orangery. So I have to remember not to call it the studio, because it isn't the studio anymore. I also brought in a few herbs. So altogether what I brought in was a couple of herbs, some eggplants, some peppers, and some tomatoes. I brought in some mature tomatoes, the entire plant that was still healthy. And then the suckers that I cut off were from tomato plants that had gotten like black spot on them, or wilt, or some sort of virus. And so I cut the healthy parts off and brought those in. And throughout the winter I noticed that some of them did develop black spot, and I did toss those ones in order to keep the rest of them going. I also kind of did another experiment. I used some plastic pots and some fabric bags, and by far the plants in fabric bags did much better than the plants in plastic pots, and I'll show you that in a minute. The other part of my experiment was using store-bought potting mix versus dirt that came out of these beds. Now, as you can see, these beds look a little pathetic right now. I am in the process of shoveling all the dirt out and making rows. This is actually garlic planted in between here. But I did take some of the plants in the dirt that they were in into the sunroom, and that may be part of the problem with the pests, that I used dirt that had been outside. But those plants did much better, despite the fact that I brought dirt from outside, than the plants that I potted in the store-bought potting mix. It was pretty good potting mix, or it was supposed to be. It was organic, and unfortunately, once we opened it, it really was like first year wood chip compost. It wasn't really like potting mix. I'll show you that too. I also noticed that some varieties of peppers did very poorly being brought inside. Now, if you don't know this, peppers are actually a perennial, and in the right climate, they'll just overwinter and keep growing. And you can prune them in order to make them into a bushier and bushier shape so that they get bigger and bigger as they grow, and they'll yield more and more peppers every year. And in some areas, you can actually overwinter them, like in Florida. You can just trim them back and mulch over them and in a sheltered place, and they'll come back in the spring. I decided that instead of doing that, what I wanted to do was actually just take them into the sunroom, because I have a sunroom, and see what would happen. I really wanted to try to keep all the different varieties of peppers that I acquired last year, because every year I acquire a lot of peppers and then I feel kind of sad to see them go. And then in the springtime, I can't find the same seeds or the same starts to grow those peppers again. So rather than go through all of that, I thought I'll try to overwinter them inside. I expected that I would have plants that survive for the most part, which I did. I did not expect that they would keep yielding peppers even inside the house all winter long, but they did. Move this out of the way, and then I'll show you some of the other plants. These are tomato plants that I snipped off of unhealthy tomato plants, and I brought them inside, but I really like Mr. Stripey tomatoes, and I can never seem to find them 2 years in a row. So I took all the healthy suckers off of my Mr. Stripey tomatoes and I brought them into the house. And as you can see, it's got, or maybe you can't, but I can see that it's got a lot of little bugs and stuff on it, but they seem to be doing well. My concern was taking them inside like that they wouldn't get enough light to survive, and that in the springtime I would have the same issue that I have had in the past with seedlings, where you have to harden them off to bring them back out. Been pleasantly surprised. They actually, I mean, they don't look as green as they could, but they look okay. And bringing them outside, they haven't had sun scald or anything. They've done really, really well, actually. I brought in probably about 40 of these clippings, and I did lose quite a few of them to the aphid and thrip infestation. And they're just, you can see them, I can see them falling off. They're still here, not nearly in the numbers that they were. Being outside has helped. I live in Georgia, so right now it's like 60 degrees outside, but today's kind of a fluke. But on the days when it's over 50, I bring them outside and I let them sit. And if it stays over 50 at night, which sometimes it does even in the wintertime here, I just let them stay outside all night. And they've been getting some rainwater, which is better for your plants than tap water. Or at least it used to be. The earth is getting very polluted these days, who knows. But they seem to be doing actually really well. They've got a lot of new growth on them. They probably need some fertilizer, but they're doing really well. And it will be interesting to me to see if I can keep them alive until the beginning of May, when it's very safe to plant out here. I think our last official frost date is like April 21st or something, but I've seen frosts that kill on April 29th, so I wait until May 1st, and I'll be waiting until actually Cinco de Mayo this year. These are some eggplant seedlings that I started outdoors last year, and they never did anything. And I actually either had just had surgery or was about to have surgery when these plants were brought inside, and my husband dug up a lot of these things and brought them in for me, and he decided to grab these. I wouldn't have bothered with them, but he's got a bigger heart than I do, so he decided to bring them in and see if they would do anything. And he thinks that he got them from the eggplant section. They look a little strange to me, but they might be eggplants. Oh, you have a root in the other pot. Whoops. Well, okay, so here's the one that's doing the best out of all. For the most part, the eggplants that were outside, the mature ones that were outside, did not survive the winter in the sunroom. So that sucks. But these did pretty good. I have to say I'm surprised. I don't know if they'll continue to surprise me or if this is going to be really disappointing in a couple of months. But so let's go for a little walk around here, and I'll show you kind of what I've got going on here actually first. So these are all garlic beds. I recently found out I may actually be allergic to garlic, so I'm very excited that I have so much of it, as you can imagine. It's very strange to see all this dead stuff and then all these beautiful green nightshades hanging out in the middle of it. I also have some raspberry bushes here in the middle that I'm going to be transplanting because they don't like this full sun location. Over on this side I have some onions and some tree branches that have fallen in the bed. And I have a little bit of space left at the end that I haven't planted anything, and I think I'll put some flower bulbs down there to help with early pollinators. And over here I have a bed that I had tomatoes and various other things planted in last year. I have some herbs that managed to overwinter in that corner over there. But I had some strawberries in a raised bed, and I'll show you the raised bed garden later. But I decided to move the strawberries over here and put them in that bed. That bed will be staying, so will this other one that I showed you right here in front of it. The other beds out here will be going, or they'll be getting moved. I'll probably still grow some things in beds because I think it might be advantageous for certain things, but we'll get into all that again in another video. Over here we have some pretty sad looking pepper plants. Some varieties really didn't overwinter very well at all, and it may actually not be the variety. It might be in large part due to this absolutely horrific purchased potting soil. I hate it. There's also, I found some sweet potatoes when I was moving dirt around that had survived somehow, so I am giving them a chance to make me some slips. Yeah, these don't have sun scald on them, but they don't look great anyway. They don't look good inside. And then this one in the plastic pot behind it, I don't know if you can see, it has no leaves on it whatsoever. So I'm going to give it a good haircut and hope that because it's still green that it will come back. It might not though. I have some extra fabric bags, and I think I'm going to transplant these two in plastic pots because this one has a few leaves, but it also doesn't look very good. No chickens, you can't come in here. My chickens decimated my garden last year. I got almost nothing out of it thanks to them. So over here we have a honeyberry bush that actually seems to be doing okay right there in that full sun spot. We'll see how it goes this year. We also have some pepper plants that have some sun scald on them. And they also have, though, some new leaves right above that sun scald. So they've actually recovered really well from being brought outside. Not all of the plants did this. Some of the pepper plants did get sunburned or sun scald. But they've all started to grow new leaves that are really healthy looking leaves. This one is in that store-bought compost, and it seems to be doing okay. And there's actually two of them in there. And they seem to be okay. So it may be down to certain varieties of peppers prefer that store-bought compost and some don't. So behind it is that mature tomato plant that I was telling you about. It's got tomatoes, a cluster of tomatoes up there on the top, and it's just looking great. My cat fell on it at one point and she broke part of it off. But I got some pretty good size, like probably 8-ounce tomatoes off of it while it was growing inside in the wintertime. So hopefully it does well as a container plant going in and out all spring, and it's obviously an indeterminate, so I'll just bring it out and put it on a trellis and see how it goes. We'll see, can it get 20 feet tall this year? Maybe. I didn't plant that one until the end of summer too, so it's pretty big. And then here we have more stuff. This is a basil plant, and it's in my very sandy local soil, but it seems to like it. Yeah, I think it needs to be watered. I'm not sure, actually. Let's see what the moisture thing will say here. Yeah, it probably could use some water today. It is supposed to rain, though. So this is very handy. I think it was about $20, maybe. Especially if you're going to try to overwinter your plants. It's got a light, a pH, and a moisture indicator on it. Out here right now, it's about midway on the meter. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that on the camera because of the light out here. Inside the sunroom, it'll be at about 200, which it says is dark, okay? However, this morning when I brought these plants outside, it was very cloudy, and it was actually darker out here than it is in the sunroom about 7 feet from the window. So if you're thinking you have to use a lot of grow lights in order to take these inside, I actually didn't use grow lights. I just used the natural light coming from the window. So again, we have a pepper plant here that doesn't look great. And it's in that store-bought potting mix. And it's dry. It's wet, but it feels dry. It's very hard to describe, but as you can see, it looks like maybe first year wood compost. It's just trash. I'm really disappointed in it, actually. There was one real standout, though. This is I believe these are a Serrano hybrid pepper. I bought these as starts in, I want to say July, maybe. These have given me a ton of peppers all summer long, and when I brought them inside, they kept producing like crazy. And I have picked these a couple of times, and yeah, I'm pretty sure that these are a Serrano hybrid. So this one, it thrived indoors, and it came outside with no sun. Oh, yeah, no, that's someone else. So this other pepper plant next to it has sun scald, but these Serranos came out without any. And they've been growing new little leaves and just look pretty good, actually. Which one of these is most ripe, do you think? This one's bigger, so I think this one's more ripe. All right. Well, I stopped recording. I hope it recorded the whole thing. So I'll let you look at my ducks for a minute. Oh yes, they get very, very curious anytime I get the camera out. They don't trust it. So that is how my experiment with growing peppers indoors worked. The peppers resisted disease a lot better than all the other plants did. The eggplants pretty much didn't make it, except for the very small seedlings that were brought indoors. And the tomato plants, they had a lot of disease, but some of them pulled through. So I'm hoping that they'll be very strong plants. Well, that is it for me and all these birds. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again soon for whatever springs up in the garden. Bye-bye.